What up, Bone Ponies? This is Cody at Tabletop Totality, and I'm here with my boys.
Neil.
Steve.
Oh, shit.
Oh, we did it at the same time.
Fuck.
Wow.
That's magic.
Wow.
So it's Neil Steve here.
Yeah. Smith.
Steel. It's Steel. It's
Yeah.
Steel and
It's
Lee.
Cody and Seal. Cody and
Yeah.
Seal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, today we are talking over at the Bone Pony Ranch, the good old Bone Pony Ranch. We're talking about environments in your RPGs. And what we mean by that is oftentimes people are playing, they're playing Star Wars, playing Lord of the Rings, and maybe they're just going from point A to point B. And your world can kind of become bland if that's all you're doing. If you're just rapid traveling, Skyrim in it.
Yeah.
You need to get out there, you need to kind of experience things. And you can make your environment not only interesting and intriguing to your players, but you can also make your environment just more dynamic when it comes to things like combat or really anything like that. Having in your descriptions to people the amount of rubble that is on the floor from a wall that caved in could be useful, because now a player could say, well, I want to run over and grab a piece of that rubble and I want to throw it at the creature that's attacking us. Or I want to make sure I don't trip over the rubble.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to talk about environments like that.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's definitely one of those things that when you paint a bigger picture about your environment, it gives more almost ways to solve a situation or more impacts into whatever's going on, right? As Cody had just said, if you explain that there's rubble everywhere, now that's going to be something that's in any player's head. It's going to be one of those innate things that's just sitting there. They might not notice even anything of it. They may not use anything of it, but one of your players may, or even now your creatures can use that against your players. Now it's something that adds in there, or it's just, hey, you gotta go across this icy bridge, and whoop, it's icy now. That's the treachery point, and it's been windy all day. Yeah,
and windy.
Yeah.
So there's no creature now that they're fighting. They're just fighting their environment. So instead of just traveling across it and, oh, yep, it's just a really narrow bridge, but you walk right fine. Now you have an actual encounter instead of throwing maybe creatures at them.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, everything about your game doesn't have to just be going from fight to fight to fight.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff in between that that the players have to experience, and
even if that's what your party likes. If your party really likes combat, that's fine. Don't bog them down in your landscape, but at least let them experience the landscape so that they understand the world that they're in.
Offer them the ability to explore and give them more options to sort of see what's there, because there could be hazards, there could be options for them to explore things, and there could also be rewards if they are able to find them. And all that is just gotta look around. They gotta know what's there and know what to look for.
Right. Before we get too carried away on all of this environment stuff and this landscape and tabletopping, we should mention that we at Tabletop Totality have several adventures that are available on our drive-through RPG.
Oh my god!
8 out of 9 of them are pay what you want. One of them is only $3, and we're planning on putting out a bunch more this month. We got about 4 or 5 coming out this month, and we're getting ready to do a book, to do a Kickstarter for a book come the new year. Before the new year. So keep an eye out for that. What else we got there, boys?
So we have all that. As always, we also have all of our merchandise. If you want some cool Kurgan Runekeeper swag, that's always out there. Which will be all in the links below. Stickers, phone cases, whatever your heart wants from our designs, you can rep it. You want a cool bone pony skull on your chest? We got you.
you want Steven to come and stay in your house?
We got you.
There's a tier for that on our Patreon.
I don't know why you would want that. I don't know why that tier is even there. I didn't ask for it to be put there, but it's there.
Steve's a transient. He's our transient member.
Yeah.
So he just kind of hops around from state to state. So if you have a couch and you'd like him to hang out there for a day or two.
Do you want to see the process of Steve creating things for Tabletop Totality? Go to our Patreon. Tabletop Totality. Find the tier. If you can't find it, perhaps another tier will be your fit.
And to clarify, it's not a tier where you get to watch me do streams of art. It's a tier where I come to your house and live with you for
you are now responsible
an undetermined period of time.
Steve, for a indeterminate amount of time
until the next person subscribes to that tier.
Look, folks, times are tough. So please go to tabletoptotality.com, buy our merch, and make sure that I am not coming to random strangers' homes and living in their attics.
If you want to consider a really cool tier that we do offer, it is one of our Patreon tiers that's called Kurgan's Care Packages. It's a really cool thing that we've always tried to do when we've started this business, which is be able to give back to the community that we have so much enjoyed. It's usually for disenfranchised children, schools that maybe have some after-school activity that one of the teachers is doing that teaches kids about Dungeons & Dragons or board games or any tabletop game. And we try and supply them with some supplies, as we think it's a great way for maybe those kids who don't want to play sports can still be around in a club with other kids or get away from this crazy world.
Well, and even recently we sent a care package out to California, and it was to a group of 14 kids, and 11 of them were girls, which was awesome because in our circles, we have girls that play, but this has always kind of been a more male dominated hobby, and not that it has to be that way or that we want it to be that way, but that's just kind of how it has been traditionally. So when we were like, 11 of them are girls, we're like, we got to send these kids some games so that they can get into the hobby and see what it's about.
It's for everybody.
And it was right in the middle of, it was right at the peak of pandemic too. So, it gave them a chance to do something, they could at least have some fun with their friends and not just be on Zoom or whatever doing classwork all the time. But they had something else they could do with their friends. So we do stuff like that, and we do our monthly live streams for Extra Life. And if you're watching us now, you can find out all the links, all the stuff that we're involved in right below us. I said doobly doo once, I got yelled at, so I'm not going to do that again. I'm just not.
It's in the ranch below.
Yeah.
It's in the stable down below.
It's in the pony corral.
There you go. It's down there in the corral.
That's it.
When we're talking about environment, right? So one of the things that comes to mind is like, Tolkien is a very big influence to me, and Mordor in itself, the trek to Mordor in itself is such a daunting thing for the Fellowship, even for people like Legolas, Aragorn, Gandalf. None of them take it lightly. So there's the Boromir. The one does not simply walk into Mordor, but really, the people were, even the great heroes were kind of shook about going to this place because it is inhospitable. It's the water is poison. The air is burning ash. It's dark. There's no food supply. Like, the rocks are razor sharp. The brambles are enough to ensnare people and kill them. So it's a very, detailed place. It's a very treacherous place, but it also, Tolkien did such a good job of it that it's almost like it's a villain in itself. Sauron is not just in Mordor. Like, the land is also supporting him, basically. And they call it, the Land of Shadow, the Black Land. And I think you can do that in D&D. I think you can do that in any role playing game, really. Um, I feel that like Barovia is one of them.
Oh yeah,
Barovia is a
for
place that
Mm-hmm.
the
yeah.
setting of Barovia itself is almost like Strahd. It's up there with Strahd
Well,
himself.
it's even because like for D&D, Barovia itself actually is what traps everybody's there. It's the curse for Strahd. It's the curse for all the Barovians. It's the curse for any player who ends up wandering into it, right? So it's even it's more powerful than the villain of that you know pre-made module of that story.
Yeah.
So like that's another level where environment is, it's above everything. You can't control it, you really can't fight it, you just have to learn how to survive it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a really cool aspect of that.
Well, yeah, because what are you going to do? You're going to you can't change the land, overnight. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of happens in a lot of other authors, like Stephen King. Stephen King's Maine is very different than actual Maine. If you've never been there, it's an awesome state, but
I don't know, it's about the same.
I love it. Can't get that from here.
Yeah.
The storm's coming. Yeah.
I
but
I just
but
know that if you try to leave there, them gators is gonna make you lose your mind and go
this is
crazy
true.
with their
That
This is
voodoo
voodoo
true.
magic.
magic.
Maine justice, baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Stephen King's Maine is in and of itself kind of like a character, because it has this presence about it. Even when we were talking before, we said about like the Overlook Hotel and The Shining, like that very
Yep.
much has. There's a bunch of ghosts in the Shining, and there's people, and there's other things that are going on, but the hotel itself has this almost like a sentience. It has
Yeah.
a sense
Yep.
Yeah. The
about it.
hotel. Yeah. The hotel is basically the villain of that entire
There's a
story.
there's a feeling to it, yeah, and um, we're not saying that you have to do that for everything.
Yeah.
If they're having a really boring walk through a boring part of your landscape, you can shake it up, but it doesn't have to be some big deal. But at least tell them what's going on. What does it smell like?
Well, not yeah.
What does it look like? Is the ground soft?
Yep.
Are the wagon wheels sinking into the trail as you're going to the next town? Like
Well,
there's
it's
a lot of different
also
things you can do.
yeah. There also is the other aspect of, it doesn't need to be this like an environment in itself, doesn't need to be magical or it is this being, right? Like the hotel that we were talking about. If anybody is big outdoorsy or anything like that, or even understands the aspect of how dangerous it could be just to walk through the forest, right? You're in the middle of anywhere, it's just regular woods, it's nature, and nature in itself, there's a reason why as us humans we all settled into structures and buildings and stuff like that, because there is a level of danger just walking through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You can slip on the moss or the rock from the morning dew, fall down. There are predators out there. That's just
If
a regular aspect.
if
That's
you don't make the right kind of bedding, you will wake up shivering
Yep.
out of your brain shivering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
take that into mind. Are you in a forest setting? Is it a tundra? Is it not? What are the aspects of these environments that make it just dangerous on its own, and heighten those a little bit? Really make sure to sell those to the players. Be like, hey, on your journey, the whole time you're walking through this, if nobody's collecting firewood for camp, you're not going to have anything. You're not going to have a fire. You're not going to have enough time to set up while you're setting up camp to go out and get firewood. Like, as you're walking through, well, what do you have to eat? Well, your rations might not make it all the way. So now you have to, is there animals?
Well, that's one of the fun things that we've been doing in Simbarum with our party,
Oh,
is
yeah.
when you've been having us travel, a lot of us have been taking the opportunity to say, oh, well, I want to fish, or I want to go hunting, or I want to go forage for something. And we've been able to find like burned out cabins, or there's
Mm-hmm.
like ghosts where there was a civilization once before,
Yeah.
and we've been talking a little bit about some of the oppressive nature that can happen from nature, from the environment, but it doesn't always have to be a negative thing either. It could be a real positive. There could be the place they're going to could be a bountiful boon of wonderful magic and restorative. It could
Mm-hmm.
be a great experience for people.
Yeah, I mean, like
Um,
your players could be like, I want to explore a little bit, and then you reward them. It's like, oh, you find a cave with some treasure in it. You know,
yeah,
just you're walking along a cliffside, and oh, there's a cave, and there's some like a little chest of gold inside that somebody hid away,
yeah, and
or
I just
whatever.
think that sometimes people get they get caught up in the travel to like A to B. I don't want to waste a lot of time doing that. Sometimes, even as a dungeon master, there's times where I'm like, no, I don't have something that's going to happen right here, and it's more important that we get to where we need to go.
Hmm.
So we're going to say yes. This is you made it to this location in time or whatever. But because the landscape can also be the landscape and the environment you're setting can also be a bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
It can cause people to burn out.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I ran Tomb of Annihilation for some friends, and the way that Tomb of Annihilation is written, the rules for going through the jungle is very, very oppressive. You need to have X amount of water every day. You need to have X amount of bug spray. You need to have all sorts of things. There's all these diseases that are in the jungle. There's bugs that can make you sick. There's zombies, like just
Mm-hmm.
thousands of zombies wandering through the jungle. There's zombie T Rexes in the jungle. The jungle is not a nice place in Tomb of Annihilation, but for you to do almost anything in that setting, you have to go through the jungle. So I let my players experience that the first time they went into the jungle, and I was heavy handed with it. With
Mm-hmm.
you need to make sure you have your water, you need to make sure you have all these supplies, you need to make sure you're checking for the diseases, you need to make sure your food is being preserved properly because it's a humid environment.
Hmm.
Wounds can fester, salted meat can mold.
Yep.
There's things like that, and I made sure to be kind of heavy handed about it. And when they got out of the jungle, they were so happy to get out of the jungle. And I was like, if they're going to continue to do this, continue to go in, and I'm continue to be like this, they're going to hate this game after a while. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to have fun. And so I made sure to tell them, I was like, this is how the jungle is. And now that I see that you guys are taking the steps to every day, you're purifying water or you're hydrating before you set out for the day. You're checking all these things. Once they got into that routine, I stopped making them do it. I stopped making them do the checks. I stopped making them answer me about these things because I didn't want to beat them over the head with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too. Is like if you're going to make your landscape, if you want to make it like a Mordor, or you want to make it like the jungle and Chult or whatever, that's fine. But don't make it so negative of a thing that the players are going to hate dealing with it.
Yeah, definitely make
Yeah.
sure you keep your players in mind. Some may love it, some may hate it, but I think one of like the cool aspects of doing that, if you're done with your thought, Cody, because you just made me completely think of a new thing.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm done.
Was one of the books that I ended up reading, of course, which is kind of common. A lot of people end up reading it. It's Grapes of Wrath. You either read it in school or something like that. But what John Steinbeck, who's the author for that, is very known for in any book he is storytelling, is he does especially in Grapes of Wrath, he does, well, here's the family going through, that's one chapter. Then the next chapter is explaining just your environment. He goes through and explains what the environment's like, both nature wise, how people are acting to each other, and it keeps you in the story. It keeps you involved.
Hmm.
Take that into your RPGs. If you don't take an aspect, it doesn't need to be all the time, but if you don't take an aspect of explaining the situation, you go into a new area, here's what the environment is, you're describing the environment, you're describing what the people do, you're describing the political atmosphere of the area. You don't need to hammer them every session with that. You just hammer them once, you keep it going. Now you're on to your regular plot. You hammer it again, onto your regular plot. I think that is like one of the amazing ways to do it, because you're not so much hammering them with the environment like they want you to do in with the jungle and everything like that with Tomb Annihilation, where you're just not you're not hammering it every time, but people are going to love still experiencing the environment. Your players, Cody, got the experience of the fucking jungle's a shit show. Nobody really should want to go in there. Right. You know what I mean? But that's why it also thrives for adventurers, because that's where the loot is.
Right. And that's exactly it. Is there's all sorts of promise of reward and things like that in the jungle, and there's not much to do in quote unquote civilization in Chult. And to resolve that whole campaign, you have to deal with the jungle in some sense.
Yep.
And I just had the foresight, and I knew my players well enough to say, if I do this every time, they're not going to play more than two more sessions. You know? Because it's too heavy-handed.
Yep.
And I think that's another thing too, is that if you have a setting or you have a society or near an environment, and your adventurers are coming through and they're strangers to this land, they're going to face difficulties that the locals have already dealt with.
They have a plan.
Because in order for them to survive in that area, they have to be able to deal with these things.
Yeah.
It's just like if you're out in the Sahara, like if you're out in the plains, like in Africa, right? There are a million things that can kill you. But people that live there know about building what's called a boma. They build this little structure of thorn bushes around themselves, and they have a fire in the center of it. And they know that between the thorns and the fire, it'll keep everything away from them.
Yep. Yeah.
And
or at least has a higher percentage to keep everything away.
Right. Yeah. And it allows them to function. So it's the same thing, if there's an animal that's like super poisonous in this river, and your players encounter it, well, okay, yeah, it really hurt them, it really messed them up. But they get to the next village, they find out, well, these people eat these things. They know how to catch them, they know how to prepare them.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind.
It's those little touches that, like, you don't need to have this great overarching idea of why this environment does what it does. You could literally just say, hey, this is one of the apex predators that you're dealing with that is littered throughout this area. Well, guess what? The people who live here, they know what to do with that because they've experienced it every day. Their ancestors experienced it for every day. And that makes the environment matter to itself. Just in that aspect, oh, this makes sense. These, it's a logging village. They're going to have a wall. That makes sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's all of those aspects of really just take an extra couple of seconds. Does that make sense? Does that flush out? You know what I mean? If this people settled here and they're getting constantly attacked by something, they should at least, unless it's something of recent in that year, they should have some aspect of dealing with it or understanding it.
Right, because why would they live there? If they would have left off every day, they would have left.
They would have left. Right. They're not going to stay there to die. Maybe a couple of them would have, because this is their ancestors, ancient land, whatever, but not everybody's just going to wait to die.
Yeah, and then you said before, you brought up like politics or like how people behave too. Like that's a very big part of the environment too, and I think that that's a part of like even our current situation, like in America or even across the world. I mean, people are kind of antsy and kind of tired of the pandemic, and they're tired of being at home, and there's just this general feeling that people are just kind of like over it. No matter what your politics are, people are just kind of like, ugh. And I feel like that has to be the same, like, just how the Barovians are described. Like they wear these like colorless garb, and everybody's kind of dour and not really that friendly to you when you go and interact with them, because their environment is really oppressive. It's really grim,
And I mean, the environment shouldn't only just shape the people, but it could also shape the creatures that live there as well. Like,
Yes.
like the behaviors of certain animals, the behaviors of certain monsters or things that you encounter would be shaped by the environment 100%.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you're in a
Yeah,
dense
that's a
forest.
great point.
You're in a dense forest. You're going to find a lot of things that use the foliage for cover or climb
Hmm.
through the trees. You're in a desert. You're going to find a bunch of stuff that burrows and
Yeah.
or goes up into the or flies high in the sky to look down for prey.
Yeah,
There's
because nothing can see through the sun. It's constant sun, so you're not gonna
yeah,
look. You're not gonna try and look up a lot.
exactly. So yeah, you could use that as an aspect of how your environment affects the things that your players may encounter as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. How they're getting attacked, what's coming after them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, that's definitely a really good point. I'm
Yeah,
glad you
or
brought
even
that
like
up.
not even like what attacks them. Even it could even be like hazards.
Yeah,
Oh, there's a bunch of leaves on the ground in this dense jungle, and they step on the leaves, and oh man, there was a pit of quicksand underneath there that I didn't see
yep.
because
Mhm.
there was a big leaf there and I didn't see it. Or like, oh, there was a sinkhole in the desert that I couldn't see because there was a bunch of sand.
Are
You
you
know.
using
And
support?
then
You're climbing in the mountains, trying to use something for support. Boom, avalanche. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like,
right.
it's all very easy, but you can also making those small steps. If you paint that as a picture or you make it something that the party has to encounter, they're also going to, as we were talking about before, they're going to use that to their advantage as well. They're going to start
Yeah.
learning, hey, if I do this, hey, there's that thing. Remember, Timmy almost knocked us down the mountain because he touched an ice boulder. That
Yeah,
looks
yeah, yeah.
really similar. We could do it to all of these, freaking mountain trolls that are coming after us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking before when Steve brought up about like the quicksand. It's like, yeah, I survived this quicksand pit, and now there's this terrible beast that like I can't handle. I can't fight it on my own. All right, well, I'm going to lure it out towards this quicksand and try to,
Yep.
that makes your environment so much more dynamic, and
Yes.
Hmm.
all these little things that we're telling you about, like just these little descriptors, just even if you put 10 minutes into thinking about it, it'll be 10 times better than what you just generically had,
Yeah.
because all of these little things just keep adding up. And we're doing a bunch of world building right now for our setting of Jakuva,
Hmm.
and that's one of the things that we've been running into. We're like, okay, well, this creature lives in this place, and well, now this creature, it's developed to have talons that can tear into this other creature. This other creature is too hard for other creatures to eat. But
Yep.
now this bird has talons that can get, because that's its main source of food. This is a very remote place where these two things live.
Yeah.
And if you just start thinking about those little bits, I mean, your world is just going to get so much richer.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Even just down to, oh, this is the type of stone they use. This stone can't be cut. It has to be burned with acid. That's the
Yeah.
only way. So there's a specific guild that burns the stone to make it for buildings, or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that already, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's making all of that environment matter. It's not just, yep, this is the woods, la da 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 da, or
Yeah.
yep, we're going through the
Yeah.
plains. You know what I mean? It shapes your world.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I had you guys one time, remember, in Talaraxia with the pollen storm. The windstorm came
oh
through and it
yeah.
blew all the pollen out of the trees. And
Yeah.
basically, I did it was like a whiteout. You couldn't
Yeah.
see through all the pollen,
Yeah.
and they were being chased by orcs and everything, and
It was a wild
drop
time.
wolves.
Those
Mm.
goddamn drop wolves. Sons of bitches. We tried
Yeah,
to save
wolves.
that warrior and you just weren't
Yeah,
having it. You're like, nope,
Yeah.
I wasn't having it.
it's like how
Yeah. And I
A
mean, like,
wolf fell from a tree and
yeah,
ate him.
yeah.
it's
And I mean,
crazy.
like, if your players do learn from their environment, if they do actually like do some stuff that lets them learn about the environment and uses their advantage, or they go someplace and they figure out something, reward them for it. Don't just constantly be punishing them. Reward them, give them some experience, or give them some give them some kind of a
Yeah,
bonus
something.
or item, something to reward them for using the environment, using what they not just using the environment, using what they've learned about the environment that you've created to overcome some kind of difficulty, or even
Environment too.
overcoming that environment itself. They get to the top of a mountain by like figuring out how to, traverse, the paths and climb the rocks and things. They get to the top, like, reward them for that because they
Yeah.
overcame the challenge that you created.
Yeah, and I think that I think that just you could use the environment too, not only just as a basis of rewards, but you can use it as a basis of motivation too. Like, especially for a druid character or a ranger character, it makes perfect sense. Like they want to protect this natural element, but you could also just have a place where people live that it's beautiful, or it's
Yeah.
untouched, or there's an aspect about it that is just wonderful, and the people that live there love it, and something threatens that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or all of a sudden, like, there's a tree that grows every year and it sprouts these white apples, these huge white apples, and it's done this every year for 2,000 years, and then suddenly this year there's no apples on the tree.
Yeah.
Okay, what why?
Yeah.
And like that's the start of a little mission.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And to even speak, like, when you were mentioning about the stone that can only be cut by acid, those are all things. I've played several characters that are very much survivalist. They take whatever they can get from the world and use it to better themselves. I mean, the paladin I'm playing, he's encountered so many different resources, and like, is this resource going to be better for me? Can I equip it for myself? Can I make myself do my job easierly? He has a whole group of other followers. Can I use it to supply them with a different set of armor that nobody else is using in this world to give a step up? Anything like that makes the environment. Now I'm constantly looking for that in the world. My character's constantly looking. He sees something that he's never seen before. He's testing it. How hard is this? Is it better to use? Is it not better to use? What is it even? There's
Even
all
that
of
was
that.
even the setup. That was even the setup for that too. Was that metal that you're referencing,
Mm-hmm.
came from a civilization of monstrous races.
Yeah.
So your civilized places don't have this material, but with your character and your organization, you've come to an agreement with these, the quote unquote monstrous races. They're goblinoids,
Mm-hmm.
but now you have access to this material, and that's something right there. That's an environmental thing. These people live in this place because it's very harsh, and it's nobody else wants to live in this place, right?
Yeah.
Like they have this place, they've turned it into their own, and they have their own culture there and everything, and they're using the resources that are available to them,
Yep.
Yeah.
and that's the basis for their society.
Yeah. But we could keep talking about this for a long time.
Forever.
Forever. Ever. But
Forever.
is there any last points anybody wants to make?
One thing I will bring up, and I think you will appreciate this, and it's not fully related, but when you go to do like an encounter and you have your area all figured out, make sure that your area can fit the actual
Oh my
creatures that you
god.
want to put in the area.
It
Because
can
like
fit
that's
them, and they can do shit.
yeah, because
Yeah.
because if they just are all in a room and they can't move, but they're all in there, fireball all day.
It's what, like, oh my
And that was
god.
a pre-built
If you've played Strahd and you've gone into Argynvostholt, then you probably know what we're talking about, where there's like 20 giant spiders packed into a room that's not even big enough to fit 20 giant spiders. But
like a
whatever.
6x6. Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever.
So that's important.
They can fit everywhere on the walls, but when it comes into combat, they ain't doing shit because half the party isn't even in there yet.
Yeah.
But whatever.
That's fine.
Teach their own. I'm not salty. But
Steve,
anyway.
any last points?
I mean, just to reiterate, like, yeah, you can use your environment for to hurt the party as much as you can to help them, and just keep that in mind. You don't need to make everything hazardous and dangerous and treacherous, but at least keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Even if you're gonna have hazards or you're gonna have dangers, just don't make it to the point where it's seemingly impossible or it's just some pain in the ass task for your players to sit through.
Yep.
I mean,
For no
if
reason.
if nobody's into it, don't like take that note I did about like with Cholt. I could see it. I could see it on my friends' faces that they were not enjoying going through the jungle this way.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I'm not going to play it this way anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as being like it's the same as like just playing a standard D&D campaign and being like, oh well, are you keeping track of all your rations and all your water? It's like, who does that?
Yeah, some people don't want to do that. Some people do.
Some people don't. But it's if you make your players if you make all of your players do it every single time that they wake up every day, it's like, why do I need to keep remembering to do this? Like,
well, and the thing for Cholt too, the big thing was
like
water. They had to have water. They didn't have. They had a cleric who could purify water, but they had no containers.
Jeez.
So then they were trying to figure out how they were going to transport the water. And then eventually I led them on this quest where they got an alchemy flask, which gives an X amount of water or beer or whatever every day.
Mayonnaise.
And so I was like, yeah, mayonnaise. You can just chug some mayo.
Mm-hmm. It's good for you.
Like you do.
Healthy.
Yeah.
It'll get you through the jungle.
Mayo chug.
Full of protein. It's fine.
If you drink a cup of mayo a day, you can traverse the jungle, no problem.
Yeah, basically all the vets at the Bone Pony Ranch will tell you that a cup of mayo a day will keep the doctors away.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Any doctor doesn't want you to know that secret.
I mean, I'm winded just thinking about it, but
but yeah, there's all aspects, good, bad, that an overlord should use an environment for. Deep down, we can agree to that. Sometimes you want them to just travel to the next spot. Sometimes you want to be like, hey, bitch, this is what my environment's like sometimes. Yeah,
this is my world. You're in my world now.
Sometimes you gotta remind people that,
Yeah. And just, there's a thing like, even if you have a place that's so cold that a mortal person, if they stepped outside, they would be frozen solid and they would die. Okay. Well, now you've created a challenge for your players. Like, we need to go and get something that'll help us survive this environment.
Yep.
Yeah.
We need to come up with some magical item that'll help us do this, or some sort of protection,
Yeah. Or figure out what the locals do to keep warm, if there are any.
Yeah.
But anyway, Bone Ponies, I think we're gonna bring this one back into the stables.
Corral it.
Mosey on out.
Yeah, brush our ponies down and
brush them down and feed them.
Yep, and get ready for the nice fall crisp nights that we are experiencing out in Bone Pony Land.
Indeed.
Speaking of which, Spooktober is upon us, and I'd keep a lookout for what we're gonna be dropping here in the next few weeks. So other than that, thanks for coming. Thanks for listening to us chit chat and go off of random tangents. But it's what we do over here, and we'll see you next time.
We're not scripted.
I ain't got no script.
Get ranched.
Straight from the cuff, baby. Get wrenched up. 2021.
2021. All right.
All right.
Peace out, folks.
Later, Bone Ponies.
Bye-bye.